I'm James Kotecki. We're here back at the C-Space Studio. This is CES 2026, and I'm here with Horizon Media's president, Bob Lord. Bob,
James.
Welcome to the C-Space Studio.
Thank you for having me.
We're glad you're here. We were just talking. Horizon Media is a great name.
Yeah.
And tell us what the brand means and what you stand for.
You know, I think Horizon Media has always stood for innovation and thinking about the future and where things are going.
Yeah.
It's a 35-year-old privately held organization, and the interest is all about how do we help our marketers see the future and see around the corners. And I think evidence of what's happening in the world now and what's happening with consumer buying behavior and where we're going, how technology and data plays in that mix, Horizon is taking a leading edge and view on that.
Well, you're in the right place. Not only are you at CES, which is all about the future, but you're at the C-Space Studio, which is exactly where we want to talk about seeing around the corner and looking at what the future holds for this industry. So thanks for being here. What's your message here at CES 2026?
You know, I think the most interesting thing for me is the customer discovery process has already moved on. The way customers are discovering products and brands is no longer the same as it was only 6 months ago. When you think about the AI answer engines that are out there today, the discovery process is very different than what it used to be. So the message that we have out to marketers is you need to partner with a company that's going to help you use technology in a way to get your brand in the conversation with that customer. And there are ways to do that now that are very different than they were about a year ago. So you just think about traditional search. Traditional search and finding an identity or finding a product is kind of like slow now compared to you using a Perplexity or a ChatGPT or a Reddit answer engine where you can actually find and discover opinions about a product, and you as a brand want to show up in that conversation authentically.
Absolutely. And so is this like the big secret, the holy grail? This is the thing everybody's trying to figure out, is like, how do I show up in that conversation? And what do you tell them? I mean, maybe you can't reveal all your special trade secrets, but just on a macro level, how do you get involved in that LLM conversation?
Yeah, well, you know, I think what's so interesting is I don't think we all know the answer yet to that. But the challenge I think brands have, which Horizon Media is helping people and brands think through, is how do I use my content? How do I use social media? How do I show up in Reddit answers so that when an LLM is looking for an answer, there's certain obvious places it goes that you actually show up in that conversation.
Yeah. And so define what success looks like there, because is it even enough to show up in the conversation? You have to show up in the conversation in the right way, right? And is it even hard to measure or assess this because everyone's having their own unique experience with these LLMs?
Yeah, I think part of it is as the consumers move and the consumers find the discovery process very different than they've ever had before, it is a challenge for marketers to figure out how to get in the conversation authentically. Because if you don't get into that conversation authentically, it's going to be a big negative on your brand. So how do I create that value exchange with a brand, with those consumers? And the way you do that is to be honest, to be transparent about what your brand is, what it can do and what it can't do, and engage. So let's just take customer service. We know Reddit Answers is a hotbed for conversations around certain products. You want to be able to monitor and use the Reddit tool set to know how your brand shows up there, and not show up in a way that, oh, that's not our problem, but show up in an interested way, saying, oh, you're having a problem with our product. Let me get you over to our customer service agent to help you do that. One successful turn there helps you dramatically in the conversations with your brand, and we know that as we sort of monitor the Reddit answers. So it's about engaging with the customer at a very different level than you typically would do before.
So that's true right now.
Yeah.
Is it going to be true in another 6 months? You mentioned in 6 months it's already changing, and of course the technology continues to evolve.
Actually, I think it's only going to get more imperative that brands actually present their authentic self to their customers more and more. So they're going to have to disclose sort of the good and the bad about their brand, and when things are bad, they're going to have to help to turn them around. And that is, I think, more and more of an imperative that's happening on. The interesting thing for me, and I think this is probably the key to it, the only way you're going to be able to do that as a brand is if you actually use technology and data to allow you to monitor what's happening out in the ecosystem. No longer can you just do a broadcast and say, this is what my brand's about.
Yeah. And the other thing for marketers, of course, is if underlying all of that is just kind of a suboptimal product or a suboptimal service offering that you as the marketer may not control, but you have to go out there and sell, it's just very challenging. I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is the way that technology is going, it's just challenging to kind of be a mediocre, suboptimal business. You actually have to have something good and deliver on it.
Right. Oh, okay. So, but even say we have a mediocre product and we're out there. Let's admit that. Let's say, you know what, we're recalling this part of the product line and bring it back in, right?
Yeah.
At least be authentic about what that is. And I think that's where the trust is built, and that's when then your sales are going to grow.
When we think about authenticity and trust, how do you think about brands using generative AI in advertising and in other ways, maybe to answer customer service conversations? There's good ways that can go in more challenging ways, right?
Yeah, we actually know there's a couple of premises of showing up in these conversations. Number one is how recent is your post, right? Also, whether or not you're actually using comments in a way that you're answering questions versus just posting content. So we're actually using AI machines to help us create data lakes that brands can use so that they will actually show up. So not just your website, because traditionally, your website tagging, you'd show up in a search algorithm. That's not going to work with answer engines. So you have to have a data lake of content that will actually allow you to show up in these answer engines. So I do think you have to use AI to help you actually generate that content that's more relevant.
And so then it is possible to use generative AI to create that content, but it would still be authentic because it's based on this fundamental truth at the bottom.
And what's really interesting, because people do talk about AI and the hallucinations that AI has. Yeah. But if you train AI, and this is my learnings when I was at IBM, if you train AI on a smaller data set, the sort of hallucinations really come in. The hallucinations happen when you go across the World Wide Web and try to get an answer from something.
Yeah.
So the less data you have, the more accurate the AI is and the more you are. So if I'm creating a content data lake for a brand, I can actually put a parameter around it and a box around it that makes it really accurate, which allows the training to happen more effectively.
I do want to make sure we talk about audio as well, in terms of audio advertising, podcasting, streaming. What do you see as the trends there? One of the things that we've talked about in the C-Space studio is the gap between audio advertising and audio consumption, and I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Look, I actually think the idea of podcast and audio are merging. Like, it is becoming one, right? If you actually look at the generations, a lot of people are just using podcasts and video, but it's really a podcast because people want to see the inflections of what's happening. So I think this merging of the video and the audio are coming together.
Yes.
The great news about that is you now start to get information about the audience that is actually consuming it, which will allow us then to actually put brand advertising dollars around that, because brands are very interested in getting at certain demographics. So I think the blending of this is actually going to be really interesting for that sector.
Is there a trend, a technology trend or idea based on what we've just talked about, or maybe something beyond that's here at CES percolating, that you think other leaders should be obsessing about and thinking about as they plan for the future?
Yeah, I think as an industry, as a marketing and media industry, I think we've made the world really complex. Okay, because I think what we've done, whether it's the programmatic era, whether it's the ad tech world, the MarTech world, the data world, we basically made it really, really difficult for a marketer to do their job.
Yeah.
So I think the trend, and what we will talk about in the next 6 to 9 months, is all about transparency and simplicity, right? How do I create a platform that I can do innovation on, that I could trust? How do I get data sets where I know where the data came from so I get insight on my audiences? How do I know what my tech fees are and what I'm getting for those tech fees? We have basically obfuscated the world. And our culture of transparency at Horizon, that's what we're leading with. The second thing we're going to find is people have to embrace something called an open ecosystem. Now, you're from the technology world, you know that that's a basic thing, that open source technology basically developed Google from the ground up, right? Or IBM. Some of the biggest technology companies are based off of open source technology. That's because innovation happens in an open environment. We have to bring that open ecosystem concept to marketing, which allows us then to do marketing and innovate on these innovation cycles in cycles that we couldn't do before. So transparency and the open ecosystem.
You know, you're not the first person to talk to me about simplicity here in the C-Space studio. It's definitely a trend that people are thinking about.
It's confusing. It is so confusing out there. And if I were a marketer, it's like shame on the marketing industry for doing, I think, a disservice to helping a marketer get their job done.
Yeah, so it should. Yeah, I guess I think now thinking about it, from the many years I've hosted the C-Space studio, I think I've had a version of this conversation. Like, if you went back 20 years and you said, is it going to be easier or harder to be a marketer? You might have thought it would be easier because technology is going to help you do all these things, and it just keeps getting more complicated. As we end here, just real quick, is there one question I should ask other leaders here in the C-Space studio?
Yeah, no, I think the question around transparency is a really, really important question. Because if you can't provide a marketer with information around their audience and you're holding back information, you're stifling innovation. So I would actually ask people about how transparent are you with your customers? How transparent are you about how authentic you are with your brand? How transparent are you as a e-commerce company and what you're doing? I mean, Amazon is doing some great things. They're opening up their data set to people in ways they've never done before. Those are the kinds of things that are going to make the marketer's job easier.
Well, Bob Lord, Horizon Media, thank you for being open and transparent with us today in the C-Space studio. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, James.
And thank you so much for watching. This is the C-Space studio at CES 2026. I'm James Kotecki. More after this short break.